synonymous with each other. So
Good.
you've done some great work, and so I'm happy that you're here with us and we're able to kind of learn from you and talk to you and hear your thoughts as well. But my sister Marjorie has just popped on. It's good to see you.
Hey, hey, y'all. What's happening?
Hey,
What's
Queen.
happening, good people?
Hey.
I was just sharing that I got one of my colleagues here, Mr. Cullen White, is a teacher in my building.
Mm. Hey. Yeah, nice to join us. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Awesome.
History teacher. History
Yeah,
teacher.
I was listening to the introductions. Cool, cool. Good to have you here with us to add some value to this conversation.
So we got Jeff Jackson. I see popped on here, brother Jeff. What's going on, man?
Okay. Yeah, everybody's hiding behind their avatars, their pictures here, and their names. We'd like to see your faces.
Yeah,
but
so I'm gonna say a little bit about Jeff. Jeff
DJ Jazzy Jeff.
Jeff Jackson.
Not
is
tonight. Not tonight.
A lifelong friend of mine, a brother of mine. He's been there with me through thick and thin in life, period.
That's
and,
awesome.
A wonderful youth advocate and educator in our community for young people and families. Has been doing it on all fronts in terms of guiding young people on decision making and growing up, as well as opportunities for youth and access for youth. He is one of the best in the city of Boston to do it, and continues to do it with great love and passion. I'm embarrassing the crap out of him, and I love it.
Tell it like it is.
My teammate in high school, our point guard. I say our because you get Trent Forbes column will speak about Jeff. You ask Trent Forbes about Jeff, he'll tell you.
Yes.
Our point guard at the high school level, my point guard at the college level, and transferred to UMass because he wanted to be with his brother Ray Ports, right, from Trinity. But just my guy and terrific human being, and I'm so glad he's here with us tonight too. So
that's cool. That's great to have people like that in your life. Honestly,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
So let me jump on.
Yeah, definitely. I see we've got 9 of us here. A couple other people said that they'll be joining us a little bit later, but it's already 5 after, so let's go ahead and get this started. I just want to thank y'all for coming to Storytime and Wine. This is the second one actually, but this is the first one for Zoom. We did one on Tuesday night on Inauguration Eve on Clubhouse. Kevin was there to assist, and we just started some discussions there.
Only Mel in the room.
Yes. You handled yourself very well, though. You did.
I felt very vulnerable.
Love it.
No, it was good to have his perspective in that room. So yeah.
Marjorie set me up and left me out there swinging in the wind to her daughter, and Marjorie let me just go ahead and just go for it.
I was like, you got this. You got this. Yeah. She doesn't need to hear from me again.
I could totally see her doing that too.
But yeah, we are, just for those of you, this is your first time here. Storytime and Wine has been going on since last year, right around the George Floyd killings, and I wanted to create this space where we could come together and just sort of talk about the things that are going on in our communities that are affecting us. And I really looked at Storytime and Wine as having like a dinner party with people that I love to be in conversation with, interesting people that want to be social disruptors, and we challenge each other and we come up with ways that we want to make a difference in our communities. So I think whatever I'm going to do it with people I enjoy, doing the things that I enjoy. And one of the things that I enjoy is wine. So that's why I call it Storytime and Wine. And this year we partnered with my nonprofit organization, which is Giving Voices Project. And Giving Voices Project started out in 2016. Thank you. We're an organization that tells the stories of survivors of abuse using the arts. So we use theatrical production, wearable art, film projects. In fact, we have a documentary coming out in a few months. All sorts of different artistic expressions that people who have been through abuse or violence or trauma, they are able to tell their stories. So, so what we've done is we partnered with a wine company called One Hope. And One Hope is a company that gives to different causes. And whenever you purchase a wine from them, 10% goes to that organization. And so that organization is Giving Voices Project. And every time I do a Storytime and Wine, I'm going to be featuring a wine. So tonight I am featuring One Hope's Vintner Collection. This is a Chardonnay. So for those of you that like white wine, this has a citrus and vanilla and green apple notes to it. So if you're interested in this one or any others, just let me know. I'll be putting the link out that you can go there and, you know, place an order. And like I said, 10% of the proceeds will go to our organization. So now there's a couple of things we wanted to talk about tonight. I definitely want to talk inauguration, because I think there are some highlights and I'd really like to hear from everybody what those highlights are. And then I want us to, if we can, maybe talk a little bit about the 1776 Commission report. But I am not doing this by myself tonight. I decided this year that I've got like a squad that knows their stuff. And I feel like when we get together and we start to do stuff, there's a great synergy. So my brother from another mother, Kevin, we have the same birthday. That's why I said that. And my other brother from another mother, Ray, they're going to be co-hosting with me tonight. So, you know, my whole thing is I like to be in a room with people that are smarter than me, where I'm going to learn from. I'm going to ask questions. They're going to ask questions. And I just want us to just sort of share and talk about, you know, the inauguration, and then talk a little bit about the 1776 Commission report, what we know about it, and how we see that affecting the future of education and history. So let me start off by saying, because this is going to be the question, you know, what was the highlight of the inauguration for you? And for me, it was Amanda Gorman. It was the young poet. Wasn't she powerful? Oh my God. Oh, yeah, that was just breathtaking. And I was reading over her poem, and there was so many
12 minutes of her.
Who's that? Whoever that is, mute. There was so many parts of that poem that just really stood out to me. And I don't know if everybody got a chance to hear it, but I just want to share a little bit about what she said. Oh, okay, let me go back up here. All right. Oh, there was this one line in the very beginning that we've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And I'm like, wow, what is that telling you, America? You know, what is that telling you? We've become this nation where we've sort of accepted these to watch these killings happen on television, and we've expected that no one's going to be held responsible for it. You know, it's become this norm, you know, and so we go along with it. And I'm like, we're really, you know, becoming desensitized in a lot of ways to some of that. But that right there, that sentence, that spoke to me. I don't know if any of you have any other quotes from it or want to share.
Kevin was supposed to, how could he have watched it?
Who's that? Okay, I don't know. I guess they're talking to someone else. I'll mute them. All right, anyone else want to share?
So I'm not going to dive too deep because I'll have a lot to say throughout this conversation. But I'm glad you brought up the speech. I was driving in and I listened to it, and I was also driving in hearing other people's perspectives about this. I should say speech, the poem
Yep.
that was shared, and I think a lot of the conversation I was listening to had to do with what was the purpose in having her. She writes terrific, but then there was a dialogue about the fact that she's a person with a speech impediment, right? And that became kind of the narrative. So I found that dynamic interesting as well
Hmm.
for a lot of different reasons. But the
Hmm.
poem itself was powerful. And I think oftentimes when we have powerful moments, that one of two things happens to people. They are overwhelmed, right? In ways that they've not been overwhelmed before. So they don't process information well in that instance. Or, you know, they are, like, well, you know, why is this person like, because that's kind of what you hear, right?
Hmm.
And the message I feel like sometimes gets lost because folks create a different narrative, which will tie into the commission piece when we get to it,
Yeah.
right? And the alternative facts. And you spoke about having people on that you feel are smarter and smart people in the room. I got one of my staff people, Mr. Cullum White, who is one of the strongest historians that you're going to meet. Period. Like
Good. Good.
I'm talking about the work that he does with young people in our building around this work. Um, so yeah,
Good. I
I'm
can't
gonna
wait to
stop
hear
there
from
because I'm
him.
gonna chime in. I'm gonna chime in
Okay.
with some other stuff, but I'm gonna stop
Okay.
there. But
Okay.
I
have a
too
lot to learn too. So I
listen. I too thought the poem was powerful. Just to
Yes.
to back off what you said, Marjorie.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Anybody else? Because I heard there was some discussion with, oh, Kevin, are you?
Yeah,
You're,
I was going
okay,
to
go
say,
ahead.
I was going to say, I did not have the opportunity to see the inauguration speech because I was at work. So when I came home, I was getting it from reports and sound bites and so forth. And I'm probably the oldest person here outside of Ed Kirshner and Patty on this panel tonight. So, I've watched a lot of these type of speeches, and I've watched a lot of the production of the transfer of power in the incoming president. I looked at all the entertainment that surrounded, and then my biggest thing is, as powerful as her speech was, I was worried about the message if it was being overshadowed by the entertainment factor and the production factor of it. Although the words resonated in my mind, which actually brought tears to my eyes when I listened to it, and looking at our state of affairs as we speak right now, and the conversations that we're having now, and the people that we are bringing into this circle that have different political views and aspects of what we should be doing as far as society. I often wonder if the message and the words that I used to hear, because I lived that experience through Martin Luther King and watched what happened, I was wondering, I was afraid it was going to get lost because it was just that dynamic, that powerful. But I was wondering how the words settled in the back of the mind of the people that were listening. That was my concern, and it made me cry.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that sort of goes back to what Ray was saying about how actually it didn't settle in some people's minds because
Right.
they were too distracted about, well, who this girl, who does she think she is? She got a speech
Right.
impediment or whatever.
I was
Yeah.
proud of it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I can say, for a lot of people in the Black community, that was a proud moment, because I'm not sure of her age, but she's young. So she
22.
is, yeah, she's, she is expressing this from her vantage point. And now she did say, because I watched an interview with her and Anderson Cooper, she did her research. She did her research on other inaugural addresses. She, and she said when she was in the middle of writing this poem, that's when the insurrection happened. And it sort of morphed into something else. So again, you're getting this perspective from a younger person's viewpoint, to be able to put this into words. And she did say she has this speech impediment, and she did a lot, you know, of hard work to overcome it.
Right.
And you know, and you know, she reminded us, you know, Joe Biden also has the
Right.
same thing, you know. So I think that speaks a lot to her having, you know, the courage to go up there. This is something she wrote from her heart, and then stand in front of the nation. And then she was so expressive with it, you know, her hands and her movement. And she didn't just read a poem. She told us a story in a way, you know?
She's a master storyteller.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other highlights?
Come
Was that
on,
the
guys,
highlight?
don't be shy. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. You know, I will say that to go to another aspect of what we witnessed tonight. I mean, every morning that I wake up, it creates history for me. But you know, you probably have heard this, and you probably said it, and Ray's probably said it, and a lot of other people that are on this line probably said it or been told by our elders that, you know, in this lifetime, you know, you would never ever see. Maybe in your children's lifetime, you will never ever see a person sitting in the White House that looks like me.
Mm-hmm.
And to see the diversity and the choices that are being made, to see a young woman that is multiracial, strong, articulate, to have a seat at a table that throughout our history was only allowed for us to serve those at that table, says that opportunity and change, especially for my daughters, my nieces, my cousins that are female, you know, we're only limited by our imaginations right now, because the glass ceiling is no, I would say I'd like to be lowered, but I think we shattered the living hell out of it this week.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's something that I can definitely say about, you know, that there's something that this country, it keeps proving this point of, we almost contradict ourselves in some way, but we are one of the only nations, if you really think about it, that we're not homogenous, in that we've got so much diversity, right? But then our leadership as well can reflect that. And I know it's been a while, but you're starting to see where we're opening that door for leadership to reflect that. It takes work, you know, it takes a lot of work, but that can happen. And I think that will continue to happen, but it's going to be ebbs and flows. It's going to be, you know, stop and goes. It's going to be obstacles along the way, because there's still so much to be learned, which I think history is a big part of that, because we really can't move forward the way we need to without understanding fully the past, you know, and how that's affecting the present. So, you know, so you're right about that. I think Pat was going to say something.
I think you mean Ed.
Ed,
Might,
well, it says Pat, sorry.
yeah. No, well, Pat's my wife.
Gotcha.
We're
Okay,
using
Ed.
her computer. And I know Jeff just typed something out too,
Okay.
for us. I did not see the young lady speak, but I saw later on, I don't watch too much of CNN. I watch Newsmax. And I will tell you, the reporters were enthralled with her.
Wow.
I didn't know she had a speech impediment. They never made mention of it. They talked about the message.
Yeah.
And how inclusive it was. And, you know, and the fact that she was so young.
Yeah.
So as soon as you mentioned her name, I turned to Pat and I said, "That's the poet."
Yeah.
And I was impressed by what they had to say.
Yeah. Yeah. That was beautiful. All right. No one else wants to speak on it?
I mean, I would just add, I think Kevin touched on it earlier about the celebrity. I know we saw a lot of, people enamored with Michelle Obama, and justifiably so.
Yep.
She's a beautiful woman, as well as Kamala Harris, and just the fashion of it. That's always a big thing at the inauguration. But I also saw equally that Amanda, she received the accolades and stuff. So that kind of sat well with me, because a lot of times, like you said, with the celebrity of it and the glitz and glam that the celebrities receive, I was happy to see that she received a lot of accolades, and saw a lot of it on social media and different outlets. So that was good for me, because it was powerful. It was definitely powerful.
Yeah. It was diversity. It was definitely diverse. And I think it needed to happen. I know there was a lot of people that had some anxiety leading up to it, wondering if it was going to be safe. And I think it was important for the world to see that we could do this, that we can still overcome some of the foolishness that we do and still function. We can still function as a democracy. So yeah, we'll see what happens next. And this administration coming in, as happy as a lot of us will be about it, I always feel, and this is why these spaces are so important, it's not going to be up to them. I'm going to tell you right now, he's signing a lot of executive, what do you call those things? Orders.
Executive orders.
Yes, that you cannot run a country like that. You cannot, because it doesn't stick. You need policy.
Things.
Well, it started with Obama. Obama did it. Trump did it. Now, so what we're going to do, we're going to keep every 4-8 years, keep erasing what one person does, and keep overriding. That's not how we can't run a country like this. So,
You can.
no. So there's deep work that needs to be done. And we have a dysfunctional legislature.
That had to fill the blank. She said executive things. She said, orders.
Yeah, we can't keep that up. So we have a legislative branch right now they're just so dysfunctional. We've got to do something about that. So
imagine if the civil rights law was an executive order that that it would never work. So that's why you're absolutely right. You can't run a country that way.
Right.
You have to.
But we also can't have bills like the voting rights bill that John Lewis had, put out there. We can't have that sitting on someone's desk and not passing either. We have there's too many dysfunctions to this.
and that's the reason why we as a people have to remember the one keynote in the Constitution is we as the people. In order for this to become a more perfect union, we as the people, we have to become actively involved in local government in order to have issues that do not complement the people in those cities, in those states, have those overturned to where that we have equality and we have programs that service our neighborhoods, that allow opportunities for financing for equal housing, to development of small companies to compete with big companies, and for our educational system to be on par with the rest of the world. It has to happen with we as the people forcing the hands of our elected officials to do the jobs that we voted them into. I trained Senator Dalen Leach, and one of the comments he said to me is that when officials get elected into office, they spend the majority of their term defending their position of why they got elected. And if they get 50% of why they ran in the beginning, that's considered a success, that conversation has to change.
I think Stacy had something. Her hand was raised. Stacy, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Thank
I'm
you.
in.
Thanks, Ray.
Yep.
I actually forgot my hand was raised. That was a few points ago, I think. So I'm completely into this conversation we're having right now.
You got to do this. Yeah, because now I see your little brown hand in the corner there.
So I have a question for us.
Yes.
And I wrote some of the, I've kind of been typing some stuff in the chat here.
Ooh, this is gonna be tough. Go ahead.
So as I think about where we are at this point in our history as a country, I wonder about how us in this session and in this time together, how do we reflect on, through the lens of democracy, the democracy that we understand as citizens in this country, right? Backgrounds, creeds, experiences, lived experiences. How do we think about when you hear terms like liberty, justice, and equality through the democratic lens, the current framing and implementation of what is considered democracy? How do you guys feel about those terms? And I'll just pick one of them that I want to share a little bit about, and I'll be very brief. When I think about this idea of justice, and we've heard this on multiple fronts, there's the process of democracy is not one that's just, right? And I guess the reason I'm asking the question about the terms is because they're frequently used terms that we almost say ad nauseum. And I'm a defer to Cullum because I really want to hear his perspective as well, because we've had these kind of conversations about wealth in this country, about other dynamics that impact the term justice, right? Or equality. There are other drivers that intersect, that impact those terms. So I'm curious as to what we think about those terms as we've lived through these things, right? Insurrection. Kevin alluded to like the Constitution. Let's go back to the inception, 3/5 of the human being, right? So that table that we're all getting a seat at now, like what's the value of getting a seat at that table? I'm not saying there's no value. I'm asking a question.
Right? If we go back to the Constitution, we all need to mute ourselves and hang up. The Constitution was written. Republicans talk about Democrats were the people that screwed it up and whatever. And what basically happened, and Collins probably knows a lot more, because when we were going through all this stuff and I released my book, I started to decipher what the Constitution was, because I kept hearing what Abraham Lincoln, everyone referred to Abraham Lincoln, whatever. And basically what they did, Republicans and the Democrats basically got together and said, how do we make this look good so each party wins? And what happened was the one party that wasn't invited to the table was the party that lost. And it had to do with all Black and brown people. It made it easier for them to incarcerate us and basically reintroduce us to slavery. We weren't able to buy land or property. So we went back, those of us that were weak, went back to the slave owners and volunteered to go back into slavery. And the Constitution basically put laws in practice in every state of the Union in order for it to make it easier for us to be incarcerated at a faster rate than any lighter and brighter person. It made it more difficult for us to expand our resident address, because the illegal made redlining illegal, but they justified it by having two accounts. One account for the people that we wanted to invest our money in, and one other account that we made it difficult for people like us to get in those neighborhoods. So when we look at the Constitution and how it was put together, and I know as being a former athlete, looking at the stars and stripes and whatever, now I look at it and realize that none of those stars and stripes had anything to do with me.
That's interesting.
We've got to look.
I want to hear from Cullum because he's been on mute. I want to hear from him. What you say?
my son's a little quiet now, so I won't be interrupting the whole meeting. He was like pretty much on my back earlier.
Hey, let me tell y'all, Rory's the man. Rory runs shop over at the Cullum's house.
He does. He's the boss. That's
Aw.
what they called him at his K1 last year, the boss.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, he's a high needs student in the inclusion class right now, so he's back in school 4 days a week, which is really helpful for me as an educator. I can, focus a bit more and not have to do parenting and schooling and teaching at the same time. But yeah, just listening is just great. Listening from you all is definitely beneficial for me. What I do every single day. There's nothing I'm going to say that probably is going to be enlightening really to anybody in the room, but just so much I could piggyback on just with Kevin when he was talking about with just the inception of the country and just like the sacrificial lamb were Black people. You know what I mean? This is what made the Union. This is what made everybody kind of come to the table and move forward, because we're not going to have a union because you know what, we want to have slavery, we want to have these laws, etc. And it just always was that up until like you have the Civil War, the antebellum time, and there was almost a civil war before that with the abolitionists, and they had the Compromise of 1851, and then you know what I mean, you have the fugitive slave law. So even if you wanted to make a life in the North, you weren't free. Someone could just come and snatch you up. This is the history over hundreds and hundreds of years, and just for me as a historian and an educator, I'm from a Irish background. My name's not Anglican; it's Irish Cullum, and my grandparents were from Ireland, and they had a under a colonial oppression in Ireland, and just thinking about their story just helps me empathize. I can never know what it's like to be a Black person in America. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I can just helps me empathize because there are a lot of white people that there's no empathy, and that's what's at like with Trumpism, with the hyper nationalism and fascism. I think this is what really pushes it. Like that, I don't know why they can't look back and it's I'm proud to be Irish, but there's a lot of Irish people that kind of call them like fake Irish, but they don't know their history and they don't know, the things that they say are in the face of what if like, a lot of their ancestors probably went through. I don't want to talk too much about myself, but my grandmother was raped by soldiers of the British Army. Difficult to talk about.
Go ahead and talk about it, brother. Go ahead and talk.
This is a safe space if you're comfortable.
I got you, C. I'm right here. I got you.
And your new brother got you too.
It's all right. We understand pain.
And it's difficult to talk about. And thinking about that history, she, fought back with the, you would call them the IRA right now, or the volunteers. And, they didn't have much. It was a guerrilla warfare. But back then, as a young woman, she had sisters. She would. The history was that the English government took soldiers from the jails. So they took rapists and murderers and put uniforms on them, and they were called the Black and Tans because of the uniforms didn't match. So they had like tan uniforms instead of having a tan top. It would be like and vice versa. So they had all mismatched uniforms, and they used to go into the villages and just cause just total havoc. And these were just ruthless, violent criminals. But she used to set traps and kind of invite them. Hey boys, come this way, and they come, and then they get ambushed, or it might be a roadside bomb, stuff like that. But that's sort of just personal history to me. And she had kids when she was older, and so this was like back, in the 20s, and they kind of came, and my grandfather came, like a Civil War type of era from their country over to this country. But thinking about that history, when I learn about other people's history and other people's struggles, it just helps me empathize a little bit, and and come to more of an understanding. And it makes me want to research. It makes me want to have conversations and talk to people about it. So
Yeah.
I don't know how that just came up. I wasn't planning on it.
Listen, thank you. Thank you, Colin, for being vulnerable and sharing your story with us. You know, we all have stories, our ancestry stories. Yeah, there's a lot there, and there's a lot there that connects us. You know, it's when it's not just this country's history, right? It's like the world's history. Like, we really need to understand beyond just our four walls here and where we are, but the things that make us who we are, So yeah, thank you for that.
I just want to say this piece. I just typed it in the chat, listening to Cullum, and first and foremost, like in most spaces that we're in, and that I go into and have been in, and I appreciate you doing this, is sharing about you and your or authentic process and thinking and historical background. Dude, that's a courageous thing to do, no matter who you're in front of.
Yep.
I noticed about this man. That's why I kept saying, Colin, I want you to chime in. I want you to chime in. And to be able to talk about what you know historically in your own culture. In our building, one of the big things that I'm always trying to talk with our staff about is, like, as we learn, we have an opportunity to question and then seek understanding, and it doesn't always have to equal agreement. I tell Colin this all the time, as a colleague of his that values perspective, and it doesn't always have to align with mine. He knows that. And this is the essence of how we build, I think, stronger bonds in our communities, stronger bonds as we talk about democracy, stronger bonds as we talk about political elements and policies and sitting down at tables together, because agreement and understanding don't have to be synonymous with each other in order for us to move forward. Acceptance and humanity and empathy, as Colin spoke to, is foundational to any achievement for humankind that's so diverse. And when you look at a history that is filled with hurt and harm, and I wrote in the chat, it makes me wonder about the future and how learning and acceptance and empathy needs and seems to require pain and suffering. Like, if you think about this country's history, the pain and suffering that we go through is because people refuse to be empathetic. People refuse to accept history. They'd rather rewrite a different history than just accept, and let's reconcile the deficits, and try to build on and grow through together, right? People in this country of color have suffered more than any people, and yet people of color continue to have this hope and resilience about relying on the construct. I have some dissonance with that, if I'm keeping it real with you all. I really do. I have some real dissonance with that, because at the end of the day, Dr. King and turning the other cheek and peaceful movement. Listen, I'm not a violent person inherently, but like, how many generations do we have to be incarcerated and die? Like at the end of the day, I know that for a lot of white people, there's this background noise of, okay, if I concede some equity and some equality and some compassion, and what that requires in real time in America, and I'm gonna stop in a minute, is that you have to understand, you have to sacrifice. You have to literally give up some stuff that you have in privilege. And I know that can be scary. Like I got a family, 23 years. Like I give up stuff every day.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? Every day I give up stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? So to Cole's point about the empathy, I think if you can't grow through pain and suffering, he talked about his own pain and suffering and his historical background and experience, right? In his own life, which is why that fuels his empathy. So I wonder, for our greater communities, is that the requirement? Like I say to my daughter all the time, does it have to blow up before you're willing to learn to try something different? Yeah. Do you need to be, or you a learner that it has to blow up in your face and destroy all your face before you do different? And when I look at the insurrection that was happening, you had America eating itself in front of God and everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stop there because I can go on, but I just, that resonates with me.
Yeah.
If I can tell you, an associate that works for the Department of Defense. He said before the election, he goes, Trump has to win. And I don't want to get into Trump this and bash Trump or who was right and whatever. And I asked why, because when I looked across the table at the conversation that I was having, the person looked just like me. And I said, why do you feel this way? And he says, we've had conversations here at the Pentagon. And it said, in order for this country to understand the benefit of unity, there's blood that has to be shed. This country has built its foundation and its reputation on blood and bones of our children in order for our grandfathers to institute programs that have basically supported the lifestyles that they've come to enjoy. And I said, that's a sad way of looking at it. We have to dominate and destroy something in order to build upon it. And that's part of the reason when I looked at the young lady's speech the other day, and I said this Tuesday, we need to start turning these conversations into the females into our house, because they're the only person or only individual on this planet that understands what it's like to bring a life into this world. It's easy for us men to dominate and to destroy something that we've never built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And until we can find a space in a person's heart, we cannot change the space between his ears.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful.
And Ray, I'd like to add two more words to your list as we talk about that humanity and morality. I think capitalism has really taken a toll in this country, and we've really lost our way because it's about the have and the have-nots. And as we can see, even through this difficult time with COVID, and we know people are struggling, millions have lost jobs, millions are trying to figure a lot of things out, and you turn to the government for support, and they're not looking at it. They're fighting whether or not people get $600. And if they were in those shoes, I mean, obviously it doesn't affect them. You know what I mean? And they would allocate, again, still for the rich to remain rich, while we're, bickering for pennies. And you have people that need support for a lot of different reasons. And as Cullen alluded to, we got kids at home. Parents had to leave jobs because either they can't afford childcare or their job, you know what I mean? So many different things. Whereas our government had the opportunity to really look at this situation and say, our people need help, which is what I heard Joe Biden say. So that was encouraging. However, we know that there's still a huge discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots. And
But
again, go ahead.
But you also have to realize is that the reason why our country exists, the reason why we have pockets of people that make a difference is because of faith. Because the government, no matter what a stroke of a pen may say on a piece of paper in the White House, how things change and how we survive and how our history has survived is people finding a greater purpose to serve thy neighbor. It used to be, and I had this conversation with a young man that tried to defend the fact that his grandfather, when we were talking about Black Lives Matter and why white lives should matter, when he served in World War II, asked him, when your grandfather came home, there was a parade. When my grandfather came home, he took his wife, my grandmother, he went to a shanty town. There was no parade for anyone that looked like me. They were forgotten. They were overlooked. When my grandfather died, I learned that my grandfather had went out and saved a platoon, 8 young Black men that was pinned down by a machine gun. And his white officers left them and wrote them off for dead. He brought all 8 of them home.
Wow.
So when we go back and look at our government and our political officials, the groundwork has to be done by all of us educating, sharing our stories, actively becoming involved and making sure our neighbors' kids are watched our neighbors' kids get to school on time. There's food on the table. There's education. There's outlets for education. Our kids travel to different cities and different spaces in the world, because that's how I got out of the hood. When I realized there was a better neighborhood and a better life outside the block that I lived on, I ran fast, I jumped high.
I mean,
Get education. I'm 5 out of 13. My father told me couldn't afford college. Run fast, jump high. I did both.
I mean, but remember also, the village mentality. It takes a village to you know what I mean? And so, and back when we were growing up, there were no blue laws. Everything was shut down on Sundays. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You went to church, you went to Sunday school, you might have gone to auntie's house or somebody's for dinner. So you had that family time. All of that is pretty much gone. It doesn't exist. And, again, we get back to the the human side of things.
Yeah.
And I'll use Stacey Abrams as the example. Remember, she didn't pout. She did something about it. You know what I mean?
That's right.
We chose in Georgia, you know what I mean? That was huge. And so, but she went out, she created a platform, she got people to vote, and that's kind of the approach, a collective approach to get people, as we said, in the local government to be able to address the needs of the people versus, relying on the government and the self-interest.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, guys, let me just jump in here real quick. We're at 10 minutes at the top of the hour, but I wrote down a couple of things as you guys were talking for additional conversations for us to have, and what you were saying, Ray, about we really, in order for us to reconcile, for there to be reconciliation, for there to be this unity, for there to be this healing, people have to face the truth of things, and they have to be able to acknowledge it. And I think that's one of the big problems, is they don't want to acknowledge the truth of the history. They don't want to have to face themselves. It's a very, you were saying that, you have to sacrifice. So people just, we're not a collectivism type of society. We're more about the individuals. And that, I think, is a problem for us, because we look at just who might be in our household. We don't look at our block, our neighborhood, our community, and society as a whole. And so reconciliation is a big thing. That capitalism, definitely something that we need to discuss. And what does that need to look like? Because there's always this conversation and debate about socialism, capitalism, which one is it? Where are we going? So these are more conversations that we should be having. But I want to read you guys something from the 1776 Commission report. It's a 45-page document. I haven't had a chance to go through all of it, but I just sort of picked up on some stuff. So I'm looking here just in this, a couple of paragraphs they wrote about slavery. And it reads, get my glasses. Okay. The most common charge leveled against the founders, and hence against our country itself, is that they were hypocrites who didn't believe in their stated principles, and therefore the country they built rests on a lie. This charge is untrue and has done enormous damage, especially in the recent years, with a devastating effect on our civil unity and social fabric. Many Americans labor under the illusion that slavery was somehow a uniquely American evil. It is essential to insist at the outset that the institution be seen in a much broader perspective. It is very hard for people brought up in the comforts of modern America, in a time in which the idea that all human beings have inviolable rights and inherent dignities, and almost taken for granted, to imagine the cruelties and enormities that were endemic in earlier times. But the unfortunate fact is that the institution of slavery has been more the rule than the exception throughout human history?
So I want to, I just want to jump in for 1 second and welcome Colum and I, you know, our wonderful interim principal, Dr. Natasha Halfkinney, and terrific educator. And I'm just so glad she was able to make the time to be here with us tonight. But
I
to your
apologize
point,
for my tardiness. I apologize.
Thank you for
that's okay.
joining.
To your point, Marjorie, thank you for reading. I too have been able to read through some of that at this point. Like I say to Natasha all the time, I go to bed with this, I wake up with this, and I don't think people believe me when I say it, but I do. And it's a dysfunction in some ways. But there's a saying in life: you don't always identify who you are and learn who you are, but you learn faster who you aren't. And so I would submit that some of the reason I'm that way is because I'm clear about who I'm not. That all said,
Amen.
that report is an indictment of a multitude of things. I would say, as we in our community start to do more, and I said this before, and I'll say it again, I think that there are two dynamics at play for us as humans living through this existence, which I call the construct, right? There is teaching and learning, which is what this is, believe it or not. That's this. We're having, you know, there's a saying about church: you can have church anywhere, you can do school anywhere too. We're doing teaching and learning. And then there's the modeling of the what was taught and what was learned. And so when you hear things like "you can't be silent," when I think about this report, there's teaching and learning happening, right? Because there are a populace of people who will read this, and because of where it was conceived and born, it becomes history, right? The pen that wrote it and the place from which it originates, and it's back to the duality of America, right? So we have great faith and policy in government, right? We don't question it. So the conundrum is, how is government serving the people when government is driving the people? Because the people are less informed, the people don't take the time to read and learn and educate. Hence my point about the teaching and learning as an antecedent, and in terms of an active step, it's the modeling, right? So this report, for me, it's foundational to that belief, right? Because we'll have people who have read this thing and who will buy into this, who have not learned their history, who do not know, I should say, it is your history if you live in this country. It doesn't matter what you look like.
Right.
You can't say, I'm a be a decider, I'm gonna get involved and engaged in government and decision making and be uninformed.
It's funny, Ray, that you say this, because when Marjorie brought it up to me, I asked several people if they knew anything about it, and not one, black, white, Hispanic, whatever. And I had only heard snippets of it. I said, when I looked over and found out some of the people that endorsed it, I was appalled when I saw an educated black woman supporting this. And then I looked back and I said, 8 million black people voted for a program that was standing on his throat. And then I look at this document, I'm going, they're trying to return you back to what they thought was right for you, going through this. And I'm going, and you said it before, what's being taught and what's being caught. And I've said this in my book, the best secret, if you want to keep a secret from a black person,
Put in a book.
put it in a book. You know?
That's a shame. The miseducation.
Carter Woodson, Colum made a terrific point. If you guys see what he wrote in the chat, and what's crazy, right, is if you say
propaganda.
that out loud, right?
Yeah.
We have people who will communists. You know, this is America, the American democracy, right? Land of the free, and it's crazy. So I just thought that was powerful that perspective Colum shared.
Yeah.
But I'll stop talking. Anybody else want to jump in? Please,
Yeah,
please,
yeah.
please.
Well, I mean, my question was really for you guys as educators too, and Stacy homeschools, and she runs a business for homeschooling. And you know, they wanted to really put this in place to have you guys teach it. Now, I did hear there was an executive order overturning it. Okay. But is that going to be by choice? Is there going to be some states that will adopt it?
There's already been one that's already adopted it when he first.
Which state, do you know?
I think it's one of the Carolinas already adopted it.
Okay.
So we get back to the same place, right? So Biden then sits in today and says, nah, we're not doing that, right? And so now what you've got is you got push pull, right? So when I think about how this dude left office, right, and the shenanigans and the foolery, right, and how those same people who, like, because he's one guy, right? At the end of the day, I was reading a story the other day about this guy who's a CEO of a company in Chicago, and he was being brought to trial. And he said, "Oh, I bad judgment on my part, participating in you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Please stop it."
Yeah.
But you feel that you can say that to people, and people will still rock with you. So there's teaching and learning, and then there's modeling. So what is it to say that I'm more committed to humanity and say, you know what? I'm good with your company. I'm not investing in you. I'm not messing with you. So it's easy to talk this talk. And every time we sit, in education, we have, there's a big driver around, more effective practices to reach a diaspora of students from backgrounds and cultures. We use terms like culturally responsive teaching and learning, and make no mistake, there's a divide in education as well around the importance of that work. The fact of the matter is that work is new, and it's still in its infancy because there's a lack of understanding of the value that it has, because you don't value the people that it affects and it improves the outcomes for. You follow what I'm saying? And so because that is a continual existence, we find ourselves, and I'll let Dr. Afkini chime in and Cullum, but we find ourselves constantly having to bring it back to the forefront of why that's important, because we instinctively anchor ourselves to the construct, like the piece from the Matrix: red pill, blue pill, right? There's reality that's happening, and then there's your anchoring yourself to the thing because you don't want to face reality.
That's right.
But when you've been blown around and traumatized as a person of color in this walk for democracy and freedom and justice, and one of my colleagues said, what I want for my children is the opportunity for success and prosperity. And I said, define it. Back to my original premise in the beginning of this call. Define it. Because when we start talking about what prosperity and success means, we will have evidence of where your perspective lies in reality versus what is not reality. Back to teaching and learning. Because if you think success as a person of color, Michael Jordan is a minority owner in Nike. He's a two-time billionaire. But yet Nike's like, nah, we're good. Give him more ownership. Why? The question was, what do you have to lose? That's Michael Jordan, right? Poster child for black man capitalism. There is no loss. They said, absolutely, there's no loss. We're gonna lose dollars because we're giving this Negro more money. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're already getting paid off this Negro. We give him more ownership for why?
That's enough.
I'm just being honest with you. Like, these are real things happening.
No, you're right. You're right.
You know what I mean? But I'll stop there. And Colin, Dr. Afkini, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly just chime in on what you just said, Ray. The dichotomy between in education, I don't think it's the lack of understanding. I think it's the lack of agreement, right? So the lack of agreement that we deserve what we deserve. And, I teach my boys. They go to school in a very affluent town. We live in the inner city. And the reason why they do that is because of the resources that are there. Boston is not, I've been teaching in Boston for 20 years. And I remember going to my principal and saying, hey, we don't have enough books. And she looked me dead in my eye and said, "We don't have money for books." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was a school system. I thought we wanted our children to learn. My bad. I'm so sorry." Right? So I tell my children, walk around with your Black privilege, right? Your Black privilege is to know that you deserve the best at all times, right? And so when you have teachers that don't believe that and fail to explain that or acknowledge that, this is where there's a problem. And so it's not so much about the cultural proficient teaching or the cultural proficient classroom, because we have teachers that don't even have relationships with students. And so if you can't even relate to the person sitting in front of you on some level, on any level, how can you expect their engagement to be high, their success to be high? You can't. Those are unrealistic expectations. So.
And I like to add,
go ahead, Jeff. And
I like to add, even in Boston, to take it a step further, as you say, it's an agreement, right? It's not so much. Think about it. We have the example. We have one of the highest performing exam schools, like in the country, in Boston Latin. So you have an example of a Boston Public Schools where it all works. Their alumni association gives out over $2 million in scholarships to kids every year. The alumni association, not from outside entities, the alumni association. My daughter was a graduate there. And so we have this example, glaring example. In addition to, we have the top colleges and universities in the world, Harvard, Boston College, MIT, and really no connection to our educational system. Like, to me, I don't understand that, how we can have all of these institutions right here in our backyard, not supporting our schools, our kids, our city, even the sports teams. We have pretty much everything here to be able to make sure all of our kids are high performing kids. They have all the resources they need, period. You know what I mean? And it just isn't happening. And I can't seem to understand why.
It's almost like it's intentional too, that there is this dumbing down of our children. The less they know, there's this thing of not preparing them, for the real world, and that's why I was so concerned about this report, being something that was going to be mandated in the schools, and teachers were going to be forced to have to teach. I mean, as it is now, our students aren't being taught the full history, right? They get a little bit of that maybe in the month of February if they're lucky, but they're not getting the full history. So I know as a parent, I have to teach my daughter, right? I'm constantly telling her the stories and telling her who people are. And we were watching something about Malcolm X, and she's like, in school, and they talk about Malcolm X, he's so radical, and they make him seem like such a bad person. I sat down and I talked to her about, who he was as a man, complicated his history. This is the part that they're not going to tell you about. They're going to cherry pick what they want you to know about certain things about, leaders of our time and certain, pockets. So I wanted to ask Stacey, she homeschools and she runs a business for homeschooling, what do you do as far as teaching history? How do you go about that?
I actually, love the fact that we're talking about this right now, because that is primarily the reason I homeschool, is because I was not happy with the education that my children were receiving. I had one child that is special needs, deemed special needs. And for whatever his problems or issues were, it seems that he could not be taught in a traditional setting. No matter what the programs were that they said that they offer and what they said they were doing, he still somehow couldn't be taught. And then there was my daughter, on the other hand, who was the opposite of that. She was socially engaged and socially accepted. However, I still saw gaps in her education, and yet she had straight A's. And she went to some of the best schools. She went from a public school to a private school, some of the best schools. But when I started to question things that she should know, just in life, in reality, and things that she is going to need in being a Black female growing up in this country today, things that she's going to need, she was lacking. She was lacking in those areas. She didn't even know that you mentioned the little Black history that you might get in February. It has been, that depends on where you go, what school you go to, or what area you're in, what district you're in, as to what they teach you. At best, you might get Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, and that's it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That might be the extent of what you're going to get, and you're only going to get that in February. So, I purposefully go out of my way to teach my children a global, I don't even like to call it homeschool. I'm more about world schooling my children, because I need them to know that there's a world out there beyond the United States. So I teach them from all cultures and from all viewpoints, because the great thing about the internet, it has made the world our classroom. They just had a class today that was put on by the Library of Congress. Okay. And you're talking about, yes, the information is coming from partly from the government, so the information is skewed. However, but that's just one viewpoint they got a chance to hear today. And then I also have them enrolled in classes from the continent of Africa with African instructors. You understand what I'm saying? They also have a class on Friday from the Netherlands. Okay.
I like that.
So,
that's the future of schooling.
that is the future of schooling, because I think the more we expand our minds to understand, it goes back to what Raymond said about, you can't relate if you have no empathy. And if you've never lived it, then there has to be a level of what? Education. That has to come into your ability to understand where someone comes from, or understand the plight of someone else. There has to be a level of education. So that's my 2 cents.
I honestly wish we had recorded this.
We are.
Oh, we are recording it? Well,
yes, we are.
One of the things that Raymond said, and I'm listening to Stacy, and I say this, and that was the motivation for me writing the book that I wrote, My X's and O's. And when I look at, we have these conversations, and I look at Black Lives Matter, and I'm going, as soon as this election is over with, until another brother or another sister gets killed, Black Lives Matter won't matter until we make the evening news. All right. What we've got to do is put a system in place where there's action supporting the conversations that we're having. When Stacy says that we need to educate our children about the world and bring the world's history to our children, we have to understand that we're Black 365 days a year, not just in the month of February.
Amen.
We all understand when we're looking for answers in order to support the systems where we get this knowledge. We have corporations that come into our neighborhood and they bleed the neighborhood out of its financial resources and give nothing back. If every city, and just like Jeff said about institutions, our sports arenas and whatever, if you're going to do business and draw money out of our neighborhoods and bleed our pockets on the internet through gambling and whatever, you have to be functionally involved into the education process in order to do it. We don't need government. We need to force economics back into a system where there's a return on their investment.
I love that question. Go ahead. Sorry, Captain. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
There should be not one business, and government can support this. It says, look, once a week, whatever your profits are for one week, put it back into the neighborhood. We're going to give you a tax break. And I will tell you, things will change. Dell, Microsoft and whatever, white institutions yell whatever. Every kid walks around with the internet and a computer in their hand. Why can't the kid that's going to be our next president or vice president have access to that same computer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
And the only way that's going to happen is the individuals such as ourselves, we start multiplying the conversations and standing in the face of these people and says, look, we will stop putting money in your pocket. We will stop, financing your vacation homes, your trips, the jewelry you're doing. We will stop supporting the red carpet. We will turn Atlanta the new Hollywood. And supporting this, we will have our own Netflix. If we don't start reinvesting in our young people and providing opportunities where they create their own hope.
Yeah.
I'm a person, an example, and I told Ray, and I used to be embarrassed to say this. I almost graduated from college, not being able to read or write. Graduated until one morning I said, you know something? The one thing I didn't want to do is be a dumb jock. And I started reading. I'm not great at it, but I wrote a book someone turned 2 pages for, and all of a sudden it got published.
Look at that.
All right? The only way action is going to happen if the educated that looks like us phrases it and put us in their face and says, look, this is how we're going to say it, but this is how we mean it. We're not going to take it anymore. We can't let the fools that are going out there that are destructive, that are set up to basically wake up and say, we're going to fuck up our own lives and we're going to fuck up everyone else's life behind it, represent the people that are trying to make progress.
Yeah.
And then hold companies accountable. When the dollars change, Washington changes.
Most definitely. I agree with that. The economics of it all. That's another conversation we can really dig deep into because I'm really interested in that. We carry a lot of weight when it comes to the economy in this country.
But you also got to understand the 8 million of us that are financially able to make a difference, support someone strictly because they're holding on to a dollar that has no loyalty to them.
And just to add, Stacy, great job with the stuff that you were saying. And I know, Doctor, you're in education, but I think financial literacy, we should start that in like middle school because we know college is not for everyone.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Have a lot of these kids now where schools are 60, like that's mind blowing to me. $60,000 a year, and then you come out with this huge amount of debt and you can't get, you're fighting for a minimum wage job or you're working 2 and 3 jobs to pay back. You're not even living.
Your school loan.
So then we also have kids and we say junior college, it's a viable option for these kids. You save money, you're working yourself along the way, but we also have to get them to understand when you drop out or you don't follow through, that debt follows you. You know what I mean? You can't move forward without paying those students loans. You can't get houses, you can't get anything. So they're gonna make sure they get their money back first. And so they need to be educated. Like the trades are a great avenue for a lot of these kids.
That's what I was gonna say, the trade and vocational schools.
Lifelong.
So let me jump in. So
give me 1 second. Let me interfere. I had this conversation with a young brother that comes to my health club. Watching him smoke a pack of cigarettes, smoke a cigarette before he entered a health club. His membership is $149 per month. And he's got a child. He says he doesn't know how he's going to send him to school. And I said, let me tell you this. We as Black people, we do not understand what economic wealth is. We don't know how to pay ourselves back when we get a paycheck. We are consumers. And so I said, I'm going to break this down for you because my father died of lung cancer. I said, I told a young man that was vaping. I said, how much does it cost for you to do this? He said, I spend about $10 a day on cigarettes or whatever the case may be. And I said, pull out your calculator. I said, this is what was taught to me from my high school coach, an Italian man. Okay. You take $10 a day, 7 days a week. And for every single day, instead of smoking or vaping, take that $10 you were poisoning your system and paying for your funeral and put it into your child's life. I said, by the time your child is 30 years old, do you know how much money you're going to have put away? $109,000 and $65 that you're blowing up, and you're sacrificing your kids' education. Until we teach people how to make money and we invest in it, you know, we make a dollar and we spend $5. And that's the reason why interest rates on credit cards are so high. It's because we're I won't say we're stupid. We've been programmed and trained that if it's not shiny, it's not real.
Go, Ray. What are you saying?
So I'm gonna piggyback on a piece of what Kevin said. I was typing in the chat here. We've been conditioned to believe that what the existing construct tells us. So even to this point of what the best way to become successful is, we have to redefine these terms for ourselves. We have to redefine. Dr. Halfkinney and I were having a conversation the other day, and we were talking about this in an explicit way. When I referred to my colleague who said they want their children to be prosperous and have success, my question was, what does that mean? Because to the points that we've made here, we have to we say own the narrative. That's why we got to learn our history so that we can shape our thinking in this present, right? But when Natasha, when Dr. Halfkinney and I talked about this, one of the questions that we wrestled with was, okay, so if we want generationally better for our children, because that's why we stay in this work and this fight, right? Is that our hope is that we will make it incrementally better for our children, right? I always push back in those conversations with we can't win the game we don't own the rules to. And I'm not saying that from a personal perspective. There's historical context that backs that up. Part of the problem with some of the initiatives that you speak to, Kevin, and Dr. Halfkinney and I talked about this. She shared a story about friends of her and her husband at the time. They were trying to think about buying some property in a location. I'll let her expand on it. But in that conversation, what I was saying was we have to have a balance of teaching and learning, right? Generational teaching and learning that we need to implement now. That doesn't always happen in the schoolhouse. So to Jeff's point, financial literacy, we have to have courageous leadership in our schools. Meaning control what we can control, because it's one thing to say that the framework is bad. Enrollment's dropping in public schools across the country, not just in Boston.
Yeah.
And parents want safe schools. Parents want the best opportunity for their children to excel and not feel marginalized or belittled, right? When we're in Boston, Jeff, you know this, and Cullum, you know this too. There's always a dialogue about charter schools and public schools. And usually the narrative in that conversation goes to dollars because, in public schools, it's cost per seat. Special education kids, you get more money for those students. So what does that do systematically? You designate more special education kids, right? Until we really unpack what it means to really educate our young people, that's the key, in my opinion, to change that sustainable generational change, right? Our young people see wealth today as shiny bling bling, musicians, athletes. In the political forum, you to Marjorie's point, you'll cut people's throats to climb over the top of them. We rely on the social construct of democracy and capitalism. Those ideals are individualistic. Stacey, you spoke to some of that. Marjorie spoke to some of that. It's not communal, so it's not conducive for people of color. Historically, that is not our get down. It's not. But look at what we're doing. We've alienated ourselves from that. We've bought into, like, I got to be in this role. I got to be this. I got to be that. And in the meantime, we've neglected educating our people. Freire talks about this, and I'll stop. In order to really lead the people, you have to be among the people. Right? And at the end of the day, that requires courage. That requires sacrifice. If you truly are committed to change for people, some of the change that you won't see, that's that courage. That's that courage get down that you really got to have. And what I'm learning in my journey is that there are so few people who are willing to sacrifice in their existence in order to assure that they're a part of that historical element that has the potential to happen, because that might mean leading in a way or speaking into a space that puts you in harm's way. Nah, I got a mortgage to pay, and I'm not knocking anybody. I got to pay these bills. I got to put my kids through school in pursuit of what? In pursuit of what? Right. And I'm not judging anybody. I'm asking the question.
I'm ready for the war.
Because if you don't know the historical context of our lived experiences, what is fact, evidence to back the claim that I'm making, then you taking the, there's the blue pill and the red pill from the Matrix, right?
Yep.
Which pill are you taking?
Raymond, my mother, when I first spoke at my Black Lives Matters rally, the advice my mother said to me the night before I was to talk, and it was in a town that was racially divided, and law enforcement didn't support the side that I was on. And I was surprised they even asked me to speak. She said, "Baby, don't go out and get yourself killed." And I said, you march with Martin Luther King. I said, if this is God's will, I'm ready to go. Speak.
That's
so
right.
Talk about someone going out there putting themselves on there. I learned one thing: God only sends his stronger warriors in the battle. I'm ready.
Yeah, we got to be ready. We got to stay ready. I mean, this is the time right now. I don't know if you guys followed this guy in Baton Rouge. He went to one of his district meetings, commissioner meetings, and I mean, he read them the riot act. You could see all 8 of them sitting up there, 4 whites, 6 whites, and the other 2 blacks or whatever. And he read, and one of them was ignoring him to the fact where she was like scrolling on her tablet shopping. And he knew she was doing that. And he said, you know what? I don't have time to stand up here and be telling y'all how you need to do your job. He ran for Congress. That's what he's doing. He's putting himself out there. You step up to the plate and do what you got to do. And you're right, because I was thinking about this today. It's like, we need more of us people. Not everyone wants to run for office, but there are ways for us to put ourselves out there, to be that change. I always say with these discussions, we can come in here and we can talk and be talking, and there's so many things that we can talk about, and we could probably come up with some solutions. But then what are we going to do? What's going to be, like Kevin says, the action after this point, right? How are we going to put all of this into action? And so that's my question for you guys. Like for me, I have been, for the past year and a half, I've been with Color of Change, and I've been with Organized Florida. And I've been on these committees, the Criminal Justice Committee, and I've done everything what I can with the voting and getting people out to vote and doing fundraisers and all of this type of stuff. And now the opportunity has come for people to step up in leadership. And I always say, I don't have the time. I don't, but I don't know if I want to put myself out there. I'm already putting myself out there by doing something like this, right? I'm recording it, I'm putting it out there. So what's the next step? When Raymond asks about, what is education? This is education, right? Creating more spaces like this is education, to open that space up for younger people, for women, you know what I'm saying? For young boys. That's what that looks like. And then teaching all of these things, these bullet points that we talked about today. The financial literacy is so important, but history, our history, so there's so many things that we can do from this point. We just got to figure out what our individual lanes are going to be and take it from there. Yeah, but continue to use this space to open it up for more people to come in who weren't here tonight, who weren't to any of the previous ones. Keep it open every month, doing this, having these discussions, and creating more soldiers.
So what this is tonight? This is when I teach business, and when I teach sports, I always go back to sports analogy. This is our triangle offense. At the head of this, at the tip of the triangle, is all of us out there. We're creating an agenda, a purpose, and we're all willing to serve. And at each corner, there's a group of people that are standing back there just saying, you know something, I'm listening, I want to get involved, but I'm going to see what happens at the head, what happens to them, first, and then we're going to decide. And then at the other end, there's the other people that says, the biggest way to do this, let's just destroy, let's force them to do their hand. And what we need to do is figure out to get this area of the triangle to come here. And in every single city, we pick one task, like business, one task that we're going to start, focus in on that, complete that, set another task. And then sooner or later, when we got momentum, what happens is the group of people that were sitting on the fence are now sitting at the point of the triangle. The group of people they're looking to create controversy, all of a sudden they become silent and they become witnesses to what's going on. And that's what we need to do in every sector of our city, get a group of people like the individuals that are on here that are ready to act. But we have to do one task at a time. As soon as we get that one off the table, we move on. We can't use the shotgun approach and says we need all this. It's just like, I've been talking about, what is it? Ray and I talked about justified immunity. A lot of people don't know that needs to be off the books right away. Those of you that don't understand that, it gives law enforcement the right to come in and pillage, destroy, harm, take your life with no repercussions based on law, as long as they believe they're acting within the law. Unless you just get some dumb person in uniform that said, I just want to go in and shoot up a bunch of people. It gives them the right of way to take your life, to destroy your home without any financial responsibility, none whatsoever. And people don't realize it affects all of us, no matter what skin color. And everyone thinks it's just the reason why they don't want to change it. They think it only happens to us. But if you're one of the lighter, brighter, and a police officer runs through your neighborhood and loses control of his car, and you're taking your family off for a nice weekend, and he runs in your car and takes 2 members of your family off, and he understands that he was acting within the confines of the law, and he pleads justified immunity.
That's it.
No, he goes back home to his family.
That's one of the things that's definitely on my radar that we've been talking a lot about in our criminal justice committee and looking at that topic. Yeah, that's a huge one. Well, we're at 8:30. But before I close this up, I'd like to hear from everyone any closing remarks. If there's something that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say, some feedback or thoughts on the discussion tonight, just any closing remarks. I'm going to start down here at the bottom with Ed.
I've never done a chat before, so I just wrote to everyone. Listening to tonight, I was very impressed, and just by sitting back and listening. And what I wrote, especially, I guess this is more so to the activist that's inside Raymond, that God does not call the qualified; He qualifies the called. And if you're called, things may change. I'm 72 years old, so I've been hoping to see some things change for many years. But I just wrote blessings to all. Ray, please think about running for public office. Thank you
so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ed.
I don't know how to send. I don't know where to. I don't know how to send this thing.
Just hit enter.
It's an enter.
Just hit enter.
I don't know if you're on your.
On my computer.
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
Ed, thank you for being here too.
Yes, thank you so much. Please come back.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kevin, for the invitation and for the inspiration.
Dr. Natasha.
Yes, I really wish I was here at 7 o'clock when this began. Ray can tell you I've just been running. But I am glad and I'm so thankful for the time that I spent with everyone here tonight. It's so encouraging to be around people of like minds. You know, oftentimes it's just Ray and I in a discussion and everybody else looking at us like we're crazy. But you know, a shameless plug to my nonprofit that I just started, and I was telling Ray about Melanin Scholars. So I started a nonprofit and an LLC called Melanin Scholars con una voz. So for our Black and Brown students. And what I really am hoping to do is to track students from 6th grade all the way through to college or to the end of high school. Like Kevin said, college is not for everyone, right? And so I want to put my students on a trajectory of success, but success by how they define it, right? So success to them may be, hey, I want to learn how to grow my own food. Guess what? Melanin Scholars is here to help you. Oh, I want to go to, you know, an HBCU. Guess what? Melanin Scholars is going to make sure that you are on your trajectory to success. And so, you know, once I get it up and running, things keep falling in my lap. So once I get it up and running, I will be sure to.
You have your 501c3 yet?
Yes.
You do. You have a
board.
website?
I'm on the board.
We're doing my website now. I just got my logo done. And
okay.
My logo, I love it. It's a graduation cap with a Sankofa bird underneath. And it says Melanin Scholars.
Wonderful.
I'm glad you got to Dr. F. Kenny and she said that, because I got my notes right here. If Homegirl didn't kick that, I was about to go in. Like, listen, I'm about to put her on blast right now. So I'm glad.
I'd love to talk to you about the organization, because you missed the beginning, but this Storytime and Wine is in a partnership with my nonprofit. So I have a nonprofit as well, called Giving Voices Project. So, and so I partnered with a wine company and we use it to raise funds for the organization. So that's why I came up with Storytime and Wine. So yeah, I'm so excited to hear that. Yeah, definitely.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming, and hope to have you again.
Definitely.
I think another good place to connect is with someone who's directly anchored to youth services in and around Boston. And who's that person on here? Oh, JJ.
Well, and
I feel like I've seen you before. Where have I seen you?
I've seen you before as well, but Boston is small. We probably.
I know. There's about 10 of us.
I work at Mildred. But again, thank you again, Marjorie, Raymond. You know, we go way back a lot of years. So thank you for this opportunity. And Dr. Natasha, 30 guys that I went to Trinity College with, all men of color. We also started a nonprofit to work with the young people. We're gonna kind of start it back at Trinity College, where so as your kids matriculate into college, higher education, our goal is to support those kids that are at predominantly white colleges and institutions, and kind of help them through, not just getting through, you know, those experiences, but as they become young professionals in a lot of different work environments where they may have similar, you know, situations of isolation and those kinds of things. So we want to be a support to those young people as they matriculate through college and enter the professional world. So I'll be in contact with you around that, you know, as you're working with those young kids, because we want to start like middle school age as well, and kind of help work them through those systems and help navigate those systems. So
I love that partnership. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, Stacy.
She's got to unmute.
I couldn't get off mute. Sorry about that. I am so loving the nonprofits and the youth. I love it. I'm going crazy over here. I'm screaming, I'm clapping. I just love it. I mean, when I say I'm an education advocate, I'm an education advocate for a new day. I'm an education advocate for educating our youth in a new way, because you're right, college is not for everyone. And the path to success, whatever success looks like and whatever you deem that to be, is not the same for everyone.
Yeah.
And you can be successful even if you don't have a degree. You can be successful if you don't do math that well. You can be successful if you don't read that well. You know, there are paths to success, you know, and it starts with understanding that education needs to be looked at in a different way for a new day. I
Yes.
think
I like
I
that.
push upon my children. I don't care about you learning what happened in the past, or learning what someone else already wrote, or what someone has prescribed for you to learn. What I want you to do is to learn how to learn.
Yeah.
My daughter had her evaluation today, and her teacher asked her, well, what do you think your greatest asset is? And she said, that I can learn anything. And that I can do anything. And you can, because you can learn. As long as you have the capacity to learn and acquire information and knowledge, you can learn anything.
Yes. Amen.
So it doesn't
That
matter
critical
whether I
thinking
learn.
skills.
Yes. You gotta use your brain. That's what it's for. So I'm so inspired by everyone here, and I am so glad you invited me, and thank you for allowing me to come on your platform today.
Definitely love having you here. You're my girl. Appreciate it. Cullum.
There we go. I was muted again. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you too. It was just great listening to everybody. And thank you, Ray, for inviting me. I think I did see this a while back. So that definitely that wine logo is a good hook for everyone. So keep that up. And just to remind you, Marjorie, just to put that plug in there so I can buy that bottle for you if they get that.
Most definitely, I'll do that now.
But yeah, no, thank you, everybody. It was great listening. It was something that I was meant to be here for. I believe that's why I came. And I definitely learned a lot. And it was just hearing people's voices. We don't get to hear a lot of voices anymore with all this lockdown and everything, and outside of like work or just socialization, just like real talk and stuff like that. So thank you for everybody for having me in here.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Hope you come back again. And I noticed you were drinking a red wine tonight. What were you drinking, Cullum? I usually like to ask everyone this at the very beginning. What are you drinking?
I just poured a glass. I didn't really get too far in it, but it's it's a cab.
Okay.
Not really a wine person, but we had a few bottles over from the holiday.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Twin brother, Kevin.
This is amazing. This whole event, my relationship with you, the brother from another mother, Raymond, my new family, that I've adopted without the assistance of 23andMe. Colin, to be surrounded by so many dynamic, brilliant minds with such a great voice. My grandfather and Raymond and Marjorie have heard me say many quotes of my grandfather, because I learned from a young man that his father was one generation removed from slavery. And he taught me the greatest motivational book that's ever written was the Bible. He says, anyone that quotes you different and takes ownership has stolen from the Bible. So I own nothing that anyone would say is inspiring. I'm just recreating history in the present and trying to make my own history. So when my grandfather told me that when you get to a point in life, it is your duty to bring someone else along, which you guys have brought me along. I've educated myself. That's where my tagline says, reach one, teach one. And my biggest gift and my whole purpose of writing my book is to bring people together, no matter what your background is economically, no matter what skin tone. I try to teach people, especially my Black and brown people, do not be ashamed of who your identity is. Do not be ashamed of the fact of what you think you don't know. Try to make a living and an impression on this world with what you do know, and then associate yourself with like-minded people. If someone had told me that I would be an author of 3 books, soon to be 4, I would have told you I agree. It's going to be 5 or 6. Had read one of my papers and says, you know, Richard LeGrevinus that did Pretty Woman and whatever, sat there and laughed and made me feel like crap when he read my first screenplay, and he said it was the worst screenplay he's ever written. And I said, you know, Richard, I said, you know, couldn't you found a better way to say it? Because I was nervous about giving someone that wrote Pretty Woman, you know, my screenplay. And he says, hold on. He says, but you still tell a story better than anyone that's making a living out of Hollywood. He said, just get it down on paper and you will find someone that could format it in a way. He said, just tell your story. So when I talk about Storytime and Wine, you know, anyone that sees this video that wants to attach their brand, their sponsor, and sponsor a program like this, I'm going to say you don't have to ask yourselves twice. Contact Marjorie Phoenix and become part of the team, because this is a wagon that's going full speed uphill, and there's no downward spiral to where this can be. As long as we stay together and the leaders on here, we branch out and we plant our seeds, because even dropping a seed where there's sewage, the ground is fertile. And as long as you water it and educate it and support it, it will, a rose will grow no matter where. So I am honored and privileged to be among greatness, because you guys all have.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Raymond, what you got to say?
I really don't have a lot. I honestly don't. I'm soaking this all up. I'm just thrilled that Cullum and Dr. Hapkinney were able to make
I
it.
am too.
And my brother Jeff Jackson.
Yeah.
And he said it like we go way back. He's been in my corner in life, period. And so I don't know. I just I'm grateful and I'm appreciative, you know, and Kevin has become my brother from another mother, you know, and just always, you know, encouraging me and trying to, you know, inspire me to step into my truth, into my purpose. And I honestly don't even have a way to thank him at this point other than to continue to try to be persistent in my efforts. I know that what I am is I'm a teacher, and I do struggle at times with negotiating my great faith and teaching through the lens of humanity in a construct that doesn't want, you know, this man or a man like this man to be the teacher, right? But because behind all of that, I'm also a continual learner, and so that dissonance at times is a big burden to carry. But I keep anchoring myself, you know, to my humanity and to my commit to try to leave the spaces I go into better, even when people don't understand. You know, I got this sweatshirt from my colleague who you know, who, you know, she was like, okay, I've been talking. Yo, take this and wear it. Right?
Was it say BU? Was it BU there? Oh yes.
Right.
Yes, I like
so
that.
It's a concept that requires great effort on my part, because I am a deeply empathetic, compassionate person, and I care greatly. But I'm also very committed to what is true.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in that the truth is the truth every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I fall short as a man every day. I fall short as a husband every day. I fall short as a father every day. But I try to get up the next day and just be a little bit better than I was the day before. And to Kevin's point, I think surrounding yourself with people who will rock with you through that, no matter what. That's not always easy to have, or not just have, but recognize. And
yeah,
you know, it can be difficult. It can be a lonely struggle at times for me as a male of color leading in a school in my lane. People misunderstand frequently and don't seek understanding enough, and so you got to try to stay in it, because for me, my goal is to reach them. It's not about an ego or a position. It's about, like, I genuinely want to connect with people, and so sometimes it's painful for me, because what I struggle with is the reality that some people don't want to connect with you because what you represent highlights what they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And I don't wish that for anybody. And if I'm wrong, I try to stand in front and own my wrong. I try to model the things that we've talked about here tonight. And as I said, I'm as close to imperfect as any person on the planet, but I strive to be better every day with passion and conviction and tremendous commitment. And so I appreciate all of you all, be allowing me to be in the space with you and having time to talk and share.
Oh, we appreciate you.
Lift my spirits, every
Definitely.
time.
And we ain't done with you, Raymond, because we already decided, me and Raymond and Kevin will start a group text on a Sunday morning. I'm like, y'all getting too deep. It's not even like 10 o'clock. Let's take this to Zoom. And I'm like,
can I just add one more point? And I've said this to you before, Marjorie. And in that first panel I got to be a part of, powerful experience, and we built our relationship on that. And prior to that, we have a lot of people in common. This platform is doing teaching and learning. 10 people, we all reach 100 people in our walk day to day. So this is an action. And I want to say that out loud because I think sometimes we take for granted, like a platform, and this is the messaging, right? In the construct, that you got 500 people on the call, and that makes the assumption that all 500 are going to go and take the information and be useful in the world. No.
That's true.
To Kevin's point about the seed, the 10 can reach 10 more, can reach 20 more, right? And reach those people where they're at, like you've reached us where we're at. So I'm saying this to you, know that. Right? Know that this is a classroom.
I like that.
A community. This is
That-
a place.
That's where the power of one starts.
Yeah.
You have to, one becomes one, two, one becomes three, one becomes four, and then one becomes five, and then there's some movement.
Yeah. I thank you for saying that, Raymond, because sometimes we sort of undercut ourselves, underestimate ourselves, and think, it's not the impact, but you are right. Every Storytime and Wine is, that's action. So thank you guys for taking time out of your Thursday night to be here with us. Kevin and I we're on, if any of you are on Clubhouse, connect with us. Kevin and I will be, doing more Storytime and Wines on there, or having other types of conversations. We're going to do something with his next book coming out in February, and just, expanding this conversation. And then, of course, we'll do Storytime and Wine here on Zoom again next month. So look out for that information to get. And if there's something specific that you guys want to talk about, definitely, reach out to any of us, and we can, have that be a part of the dialogue. We're all growing, we're all growing through this. We're all learning through this. And I think this is coming back to looking at our country and where we are right now. It's the same thing with America. America is, it's growing, and it's, it's going through what they call a growing pains right now. And we have to love this country enough to want to put this kind of work in to make it better. This is the work that has to be done for anything. It's just like marriage, right? It's you're always working at it. So it's just like, this relationship with this country that we have, and no matter how we may feel about injustices, justice, liberty, freedom, whatever that means to any of us, we're going to, fight for the things that, whatever that means to us, we're going to fight for that. And so, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. So thank you guys. Have a good night. Okay.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.